Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast. Katie Mox and Will Brinson here. And as you know, this is our All 32 series, the series where we catch you up with insiders and give you all the need to know information on every single NFL team. Today, we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals with the host of the PHNX Sports Arizona Cardinals podcast, making it more fun to be an Arizona sports fan. Insider Johnny Venerable. Johnny, this is a safe space here. How fun is it to be a Cardinals fan?
I mean, it's fun. It's fun for us. It's fun for our diehards at PHNX. But I mean, I'm alongside public enemy number one. Will doesn't know this, but the tier ranking that he released.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Oh, I know. I was going to ask you. I'm aware. It's not very popular. Yeah.
It's all in good fun. But I mean, listen, the landscape of this season is going to be a trying one. But as we mentioned kind of off air, Katie, a lot of layers to this team this fall. And I think it goes beyond, as cliche as it sounds, wins and losses. This team is finally looking at the big picture and cleaning up the mess of Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury. And does that include Kyler Murray? I think we're going to find out. They're going to be aggressive, I think, with the roster and the maneuverability for 2024. How aggressive will they be with letting Kyler Murray back on the field? That remains to be seen.
Okay, I mean, like, I'm a self-indulgent man who's not afraid to talk about myself. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about myself. That was going to be my first question anyway. I mean, look, I got to be honest. Like, so I mean, just for full disclosure, the Tiers article ran on July 5th, and like, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this, but it was like, oh, like I have to finish this on America's birthday. Like, to be like one of the, I was so like, people I've been accused from Cowboys fans, and then I think somebody was asking me. I've done a bunch of radio over this, but it's like somebody was like, was the Kyler thing like clickbait? I was like, no. That's why, like, I wrote it on July 4th. Like, I wasn't thinking about trolling anybody. Like, I know people read it, but I did not think it would blow up the way it did. Kyler ended up seeing it, of course, and that's really what caused it. But the issue for me is like the out of context thing. And I think you actually maybe said it better. Tiers is the problem, right? Because it's tier 6, and that indicates that it's like Kyler is this caliber of player.
Right.
The tier was really, it's titled "No Clue, Man." And like that, what all that meant was that I don't know when Kyler's going to play, how much he's going to play, how what his role is moving forward long term with the Cardinals, and if he wasn't coming off an ACL that he suffered late in the season, I think he'd be a tier 3 guy, because of his explosive ability and the upside. But he does have questions, and you got a new coaching staff and all that thing. So like, I guess I'm wondering. What was the meanest thing anybody said about me on that? I'm just curious. I mean, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Full transparency. Well, I might have in tongue in cheek called it the worst thing I've ever seen, but that's without the context of the tier 6, not knowing the title of Up in the Air. Right. Yeah. Because if you see the photo or the image of it on Instagram or on Twitter or wherever, it just says, this is the tier. He's a tier 6 quarterback with Sam Howell and company. And I think where a lot of people ran with it was, well, if it's a caveat of his injury, like what is it? Why is Jimmy Garoppolo in 2 tiers ahead of him? Why not put Colt McCoy in tier 6? Because presumably he's going to start. But listen, at the end of the day, like Kyler is a polarizing figure. And somebody who's covered this team my entire adult life and has followed this team since, I was a young, early 90s. He's the best homegrown quarterback they've ever had. So it's difficult because you want to be able to contextualize it of, he's got some areas to improve, but he's also way better than anything they've trotted out before. And then this season, there's the huge asterisk of the people who drafted and developed him. They're gone. They're gone from the franchise. And
but still being paid.
This, right. Very much so. Right. It's a good living if you can get it. But Kyler Murray's being paid. But for how much longer by this franchise? Do they rush him back? Do they allow him to come back in September, October? Because right now, he's putting pads on. He's throwing. They just released a clip yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. He's throwing with his dad every day. And other players, Von Miller and Robert Griffin III once upon a time, Joe Burrow, like they were back by week 1. Von Miller's on track to be back by week 1.
Phillip Rivers tore his ACL in a divisional round playoff game and didn't miss a single practice.
Right. It's like, why is it Kyler Murray goes down and his projection is, well, he's not going to play this season? I never bought that to begin with.
Interesting.
But I think the layered approach is, do the Cardinals start this season, let's say like 0-4, 0-5 with Colt McCoy? And Kyler's like, I'm ready. I want to come back. And the Cardinals are like, we could have the top pick next year. We could get Caleb Williams in the draft. That I know Jonathan Gannon is bullish with Kyler Murray. I've got that source. Drew Petzing likes him. He's been at everything. He's bought in. And you could say to yourself, well, he should be. He's the franchise quarterback. Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray did not have a relationship last fall. They had to use Cam Turner, their offensive coordinator, as a buffer. They did not communicate with each other. So it had basically deteriorated. You saw it on that Thursday night game when they were jawing at each other. Kyler didn't much respect the offense. And so it's like, this is his first kind of opportunity as a clean slate with, say what you want about Gannon. I think the staff he's put together is really impressive. It's not Cliff Kingsbury, with all due respect to Cliff. It's a big boy NFL staff. Nick Rollis, people wanted him to stay in Philadelphia. Drew Petzing did really good things with Jacoby Brissett last year. So Kyler is trying to ingratiate himself to this coaching staff, and it's worked. But Monty Ossenford, and I think you guys saw it during the NFL draft, he's a shrewd guy. He got the first round pick of the Houston Texans. He held out with DeAndre Hopkins and tried to trade him and just outright cut him. Why did he cut him? We cut him before June 1st to eat the money in 2023. Yep. What does that give them flexibility to do in 2024? If they had to move on from Kyler Murray, which is not the preference, they can. So again, when does Kyler Murray and his people force the issue of, I'm ready to play, I want to come back? That's the biggest layer to this season.
So I'm sorry, Kate. I just want to follow up because I think that's really interesting. And if he's ready to play week 1, he would be a tier 3 guy. It's a no-brainer because he would be on the field. I have no problem looking stupid. It happens all the time. I'm fully prepared to have egg on my face and Mark Dalton calls me and is like, how do you like Kyler Murray now? Or something like that. I'm prepared for all of that. I think that's really interesting about the new coaching staff too. And I sort of wonder as well, you talk about eating that money. Do you think that what do you think the preference is? Kyler is able to play early. Kyler plays well. The Cardinals win more games than anyone expects. And then Kyler comes back as a franchise quarterback next year. That's the preference, right?
That's the preference. Gannon wants to win games. This narrative, they're going to tank. Jonathan Gannon is not trying to tank. Now, we talk about it on our show, the PHNX Cardinals podcast. It's is there self-sabotage going on in the spring that leads to losses in the fall? You can try to win games in the fall. Their defensive line group, I've argued, is the worst defensive tackle, 3 and 5 techniques in the NFL. And so if you couple that with 17 weeks of Colt McCoy and Clayton Tune and David Blau, you're not going to win games. You're not going to win many games at all. I don't care if you have a 4th place schedule. If Kyler Murray comes back, we've seen it before, 4th place schedule this year, he can win games for them. He can elevate this team if he's healthy with Hollywood Brown, with Trey McBride, James Conner. They've got some weapons offensively. It's the most fascinating thing because I spoke to Jonathan Gannon at the NFL Combine, and he told me adamantly, we're going to take our time. It's Kyler in the open field, goes down, non-contact injury that he runs like that 100 times a game, and it blows out his knee. We got to make sure mentally and physically he's ready to return. It's not just the lateral ability and playing in the pocket. It's every aspect of Kyler's game they want to make sure is to a T. Because, I think they're being honest here. If he suffers another injury, that could be it, right? And they've got so much invested in him, and they're not thinking about Drake May or Caleb Williams. They're thinking about this fall. But, Will, how many teams are going to pivot to Caleb Williams mid-October? If their team and their owners, I look at the LA Rams and maybe the Vegas Raiders, if teams are starting 0 for 5, 0 for 6, 0 for 7, it's how quickly do you pivot to next spring? Cardinals are going to be in that ballpark. I think you have a finite window to bring him back, which starts week 1 until about Halloween. If you don't bring him back before then you are purposely trying to get the USC signal caller, in my opinion.
Well, that was going to be my next question is it viable to think that the Cardinals are tanking this season? It seems to be that you believe not at first, but we'll see how it goes. We go down 0-5, and then that could be where the Cardinals take it.
Yeah, and they're going to try to make a lot of, I've used it, if you've got groceries from the prior regime, you're going to try to cook with them, right? Isaiah Simmons, Zaven Collins, Rondell
You complain in the kitchen while you're cooking with the groceries you don't like. Yeah, you're like, who got these onions?
Some stuff's got to go in the trash at some point.
Yeah.
With all due respect to those guys, and they may not fit what Gannon and company want to do. They're doing a very, I think, admirable job of not trying to overspend in the offseason, right? They've got they're projected to have like $80 million in cap space next spring. They're going to be the Chicago Bears the next offseason. They can do whatever they want to do. But first, this offseason, it's like, okay, we've got a bunch of these top picks. We've got Zach Ertz and James Conner making 8 figures. Let's see what we have. Let's see who can stick around. And then I think they had a great draft class. Objectively speaking, you get Houston's one next year, you win the draft, in my opinion, for a team that I don't think is going to be very good. Yeah. And then you get the quintessential top tackle in Paris Johnson Jr. It was the anti-Steve Keim class, essentially. They went big school and premier positions. Tackle from Ohio State, edge rusher from LSU, and then, peppered in some mid-rounders that lottery tickets will have to wait and see. But it's not tweener linebacker safeties. It's not undersized wide receivers, Andy Isabella, Rondell Moore. So they're getting back to basics. And I think it's important for a lot of people who don't know this franchise, follow this franchise. This is their first external GM in like 30 years.
Oh, that's right. Because Rod Graves was hired. Rod Graves hired Keim, I think.
Michael Bidwell loves to promote from within. Yep. And a lot of people thought after they fired Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, well, it's going to be Adrian Wilson, right? It's going to be Quentin Harris. Those are Steve Keim's, buddies, the heir apparents. Well, what happened? Michael Bidwell, for all of his faults, he's got a ton of them. He's had a horrible 18 months off the field. He said, I'm going to go, we got to fix this. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's not internally. They tried to hire one of the VPs from the Chicago Bears, who respectively declined. Then they got Ossenford, say what you want about him. Patriot mindset, was with a lot of the success in Tennessee, has come in here and has really cleaned house. And Adrian Wilson subsequently has left the franchise, went to Carolina. Good for him. We root for him as an ex-Cardinal. And then he hired Jonathan Gannon. And outside of the tampering issue, which did cost them a couple picks in the 3rd round, they're cleaning this and they're gutting it from the ground up. And they're letting finally the football people handle the football operations. And so while it doesn't transfer to immediate on-the-field success this fall, I do think that, optimistically speaking, I think I would rather be in this position than like the LA Rams, where it's like you're a tweener spot, 6-7 wins, bad contracts. Cardinals have the most draft capital in 2024 in what is going to be an all-time blue chip draft. And that's a good place to be.
Yeah. Look, let's take a quick break because I want to follow up on that draft stuff and the GM thing. We'll do so after we take a break. So I think this is a really interesting angle, Johnny, because it is, and obviously, you're there. You've grown up with the team. Like, I mean, like NC State, right? I'm Adrian, I went from the same hometown as Adrian Wilson, actually. But like, wow, I'm an optimistic NC State fan. Like, I'm going to be optimistic. Well, actually, I've sort of been beaten down at this point. But I think that your take there is correct, even if it is, you're looking for the silver lining in a season that might not be great. But this is a team that has really needed to reboot for a while now. Like, it's just the way that the roster would be, because Steve would go out and get all these veterans. You have the Ertz, you have the Conner, and like trying to supplement it to make another run. And it was like you never felt like there was enough there, especially with Cliff and the stuff he did in the second half of the season. I was shocked that the Texans were willing to trade a 2024 draft pick, knowing what we knew about that class and knowing what we knew about this class. Like, that was crazy to me.
I guess they felt like they had CJ Stroud. They can do what they want to do. We were at the combine and we were all in on Will Anderson. Will Anderson Jr. is going to be a Cardinal. They have the 3rd pick, right? We just assume, Jalen Carter is going to go before them, or the quarterbacks. Cardinals, they're not going to take Jalen Carter. It's going to be Will Anderson. He's the blue chip player to kick off this rebuild. And then we talked to people and they're like, they actually don't love him. They're trying to trade down. And so from that point on, it was evident, like, they tried to move that pick for 3 months. And
they made it real loud.
Yes. While they didn't get the Bears package from Carolina, I think they still did pretty well. Anytime you can secure a future 1+ for a non-quarterback in the top 5, that's a win in my opinion. Yeah. And they were talking to the Tennessee Titans. The Titans were thinking of coming up for Anthony Richardson. That didn't materialize. And so at the end of the day, it ended up being Houston, who I like Will Anderson Jr. I hope he's a great player. We covered him this offseason. Special person. But to be able to double down, and now, I mean, they're projected by a lot of people to have the first 2 picks in the draft. And while I don't think that that's going to materialize exactly like that, in a class that boasts Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., to have that kind of ammunition, those are franchise changers. Those are Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, Jamar Chase, Calvin Johnson type level prospects. And they told a lot of people in the, outside the facility this year, like, they didn't love this class. They liked it. And another important nugget with Monty Ossenford is they are revamping their scouting department, and it's going to go into place the way they look at college football this fall. And so while they like the players they drafted, and I think their class is nice this year, it wasn't with their scouts. And so they kind of had to scramble. And they also poached a guy by the name of Dave Sears by the Detroit Lions, who was the assistant GM there, came to Arizona, was a part of a lot of the nice Lions classes, Amaron St. Brown and Penei Sewell, those kind of classes. And then you look at Detroit's draft class this year and you're like, what are they doing? Yeah, he did a nice job for Arizona. I think they're all in for 2024's draft class. And if you're a Cardinal fan looking for sustained success, we talked about Steve Keim. You know, he is the most, love him or hate him, he's a polarizing figure. He's the most successful GM they've ever had.
For sure.
And a lot of that was because of Bruce Arians, but he put together some winning seasons, and he desperately tried to win a championship for this franchise. They got the longest professional championship drought in pro sports, not just the NFL. Brutal. When the Chicago Cubs won their championship, it's the Cardinals now that have the longest championship drought. So I do give him credit. He was aggressive every offseason. Chandler Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Ertz, and it was a house of cards, and it fell apart. And so now it's time to clean up the mess, and it's not going to materialize into an all-in season like they've done in the past, but hopefully 5, 7, 10 years of viability. And that's what they're trying to do. And the biggest question is Kyler Murray going to be a part of that?
Well, Johnny, you talk about how, they're going to be all in 2024, and maybe this isn't the season for them. They have the lowest win total of any team in the NFL. It was 5, and then it got knocked down to 4.5. And hand up, Brinson and I like the under 4.5. How many games do you think that this team can win?
It's like an impossible question. How many games does Kyler Murray play? If Kyler Murray plays 2/3 of the season, 3/4 of the season, I think they can get to 5-6 wins, especially late in the year. We had so many teams. I mean, you think about if Kyler hadn't torn his ACL, they probably finished with 7 wins last year. Cliff keeps his job. They almost beat Tampa with a backup. They should have beaten Atlanta. They're very viable with Kyler Murray, love him or hate him. But if they're like adamant, no, Kyler, you're not going to play for at least 2 months, and then we're kind of wait and see, I would take the under 100%. I would say that they're not winning games with Colt McCoy and David Blau and Clayton Tune in the National Football League with the rest of the roster that constructed the way it is for this year. Right now I would say, 4 seems about right. But if Kyler Murray's back in September, then I would say all bets are off. If he's like, I'm playing, I feel great, I've been cleared. That's why the season's so fascinating. The outside of, yes, they're not projected to be a playoff team or viable. The NFC is terrible. The NFC quarterback landscape is terrible. Right. And they have a 4th place schedule.
Kyler would be like the third best?
Yeah. It's like second him best? And Dak and right. So it's just, let's pump the brakes. Let's check back in. That's why I'm telling people, like, take a beat on the Cardinal over under, because you really don't. It's truly flipping a coin. You can't analyze it other than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, and this happens to me frequently when who are we talking to recently for a team, and I was like, wow, I was out on this team, and now I'm like back in. I'm like sitting here, like my stomach's kind of churning a little bit. I'm like picturing old takes. Oh no, the Jets. I'm like, I got hyped up about the Jets. I'm like picturing this old takes exposed tweet when Kyler like throws a game-winning touchdown in week 1, and he's like back from his ACL. Like fine looking stupid.
Your quarterback tears are in his locker hanging, and the
oh my god, I know. Or like the Cardinals are gonna like tweet out like I saw like how do those tears taste? Go ahead.
The best motivator is, he's had mud slung at him for 18 months. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
If people are coming at you and your livelihood, he's got his money, right? And a lot of people project after he tore his ACL, he's going to get out of shape. He's going to play video games. He was squatting like four weeks after, and he's a freak athlete. And I think we're underestimating like just how special of an athlete he was, being drafted in the top 10 in baseball, the first overall pick. I don't know what his future is in Arizona long-term, but I would not bet against him, especially when he's got a viable coaching staff now all in. They went to his Heisman Trophy statue unveiling in Oklahoma. The entire Cardinal staff and front office was there. They want it to work with Kyler, especially when if you're Monty Ossenfort, you were winning games with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. Yeah. It can be done. So I wouldn't bet against him.
No, look, and I mean, like, we don't want to. I think this is interesting how this particular show turned into. I mean, we want to talk about the Cardinals, but like the Cardinals, sort of, it's an unknown and it's crazy. Yeah. I'm wondering with Jonathan Gannon, he had the media thing. He didn't talk to the media after the first night of the draft, and that may have just been they didn't want to talk about the tampering stuff. And I get that. That's a weird thing to do. They're like, I mean, I've been covering the NFL for a long time, and like I don't recall anybody be like, "No, coach," after the draft. He had that little kerfuffle thing in Philly. I'm curious, what has been your takeaway from him as a coach? It seems like you're more optimistic, maybe than or at least people in Phoenix are more optimistic than maybe the general perception of it.
I just think he fits really well in Phoenix. I mean, they had 70 sacks last year and 17 interceptions in Philadelphia. And you could say, well, that was their GM. And I mean, how many times have people wanted Howie Roseman fired? He gave up 14 points total in the NFC playoffs. Now, granted, it was against backups and the Giants and the 49ers. He's a really good defensive coordinator. And he's been somebody that has been on the radar of multiple NFL teams. The Texans, Nick Caserio wanted to hire him. And the owner stepped in, and then they went all in on DeMeco Ryans, and that's great. That's probably a better fit long term. But he's been a viable NFL coaching candidate for some time. And then he ran into Patrick Mahomes in the second half of the Super Bowl, and then a lot of people were upset that they lost. And I was at the combine, and the Philly media was still peppering him with questions. He took all those questions, and he's like, "Guys, I'm here to talk about the Cardinals and our draft prospects." After like 3 or 4 questions from the Philly media, but. He's a genuine human being. And I do think he is somebody that, I mean, why did Nick Rallis stay and take the defensive coordinator job in Philadelphia? He could have, that was his job in Philly of the Super Bowl team. He's like, no, I'm going to go with Jonathan Gannon. That tells me everything I need to know about Jonathan Gannon, the staff that he put together. He's a Mike Zimmer disciple. And say what you want about Mike Zimmer, a ton of success in the NFL. Yeah. When he was the Indianapolis Colts defensive back coach, he was getting job offers from the collegiate level, blue chip schools, Big Ten schools. People wanted. He said, "No, I'm in the NFL path. I don't care about money. I don't care about fame." So, do I think he's got to win people over outside of Arizona? 100%. And this year is going to be tough because I don't think they're going to have a ton of on-field success. But I do think that Austin Ford made a point last summer when he was thinking, okay, I might get some GM juice. Who are guys that I would love to talk with? Who are guys that I would love to key in on it? And Gannon was atop that list. Did the Cardinals and Austin Ford screw up? Should they have prioritized him earlier in the coaching search? 100%. But something tells me Michael Bidwell's like, yeah, just give a throwaway interview to Vance Joseph, knowing full well they weren't going to hire Vance Joseph. They needed to be more proactive because I can tell you right now, the folks in Philadelphia, after Gannon was passed over for DeMeco Ryans, they thought he was safe. Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie came in. They're like, you're our guy, highest defensive coordinator in the NFL. They love Jonathan Gannon. And then the Cardinals swooped in and they hired him, and then they gutted his staff. Well, who did that piss off? Howie Roseman and company. And so that probably is why they filed the tampering charges. Like, we have to save face here. And this is difficult. We lost our OC, but guys, that's what happens when your head coach is not a specialist on either side of the ball. You're going to lose coordinators, really good coordinators. Happened to Marty Schottenheimer once upon a time. So I do think that it's behind them now. I mean, the Cardinals have to go to Philadelphia late this year. That probably won't be pretty, but on New Year's Eve. But I do think long term, he's got an opportunity to work, in part because he's got 100% buy-in from the GM. They're lockstep in what they want to do.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our show. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us today. You can listen to him at the PHNX Cardinals Podcast, making it more fun to be an Arizona Cardinals fan. And I got to tell you, Johnny, we had more fun talking about the Cardinals with you than I think we have this entire offseason.
Yeah.
Don't count them out, maybe. I don't know. We'll see how the first
tell the people that I didn't mean tier 6 is like the worst quarterback in the NFL.
I was like, that's not the same Will Brinson I've been reading for 20 years. Get out of here with that.
Yeah, by the way, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's it. It still is. He's still an idiot. Thanks, Johnny.
All right. Thanks, stay tuned for more from our All 32 series that daily drops in your podcast feed and on YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this page as well. And again, thank you, Johnny, so much. We'll talk to you soon.